Hey everybody, Brandy here doing my comments for my Stampin' Studio today. Today I'm going to show you this really cute masculine birthday card that I made for our latest card swap. I run a monthly card swap in the Facebook group called Card Makers Card Swap. You can find the link down below to that group or just search in the search bar of Facebook, Card Makers Card Swap. Each month we have a card swap where you design or you create 7 cards of the same design based on the particular theme for that month, and then you send them in to me. I swap them out with all the other crafters who have created their cards, and then you get 7 different cards back. So today I'm going to show you the masculine birthday card that I did for the month of October and show you the techniques that I used to make it and the pretty paper that I used and all of that. So let's get started. One of the products that I'm using today is going to be from Adornit.com. This paper here came out of one of their paper packs. I believe it's called the Basic Paper Packs. But I pulled out the sheet that's actually called Blue Chevron. Recently, about a month or so ago, Adornit.com asked me to be an ambassador for their paper craft line. And this is some of the paper that they sent me. So I decided to go ahead and cut the 12 by 12 sheets down to 6 by 6 as to be a little bit more manageable, and I chose this side of the paper. Now what you're seeing here is the My Favorite Things framelits that I used, and it's their Stack Dynamics, and I like this because it comes in pre-determined sizes that fit the A2 card size. So I believe this one is probably going to be the 3 1/4 by 5 inch framelit, and I love it because they've got it nested, so I've got another one that's going to be a little bit bigger that I'm going to pull out in a minute to cut the cardstock so I can mount that pattern paper on. But I like using that instead of using my paper trimmer, because sometimes I find that when I use the paper trimmer I might not get it exactly right. It may come out a little bit wobbly or whatnot, so that's why I like to use the die cuts, because then I get the same size every time. And I'm just using some purple tape here to hold the die down so it doesn't move around when I run it through the Big Shot. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to shade a bit of the side of the paper. And what I'm doing there is using just a regular craft sponge and some distressed ink. And I believe that color is Weathered Wood. And I thought it looked really great with that gray cardstock, and I've just sort of you know, textured the sides of it by using the sponge to apply it and just getting, you know, little edging around the side. I'm using my glass mat from Tim Holtz because it's really easy to pick up the ink on the mat, therefore I'm not wasting a lot of ink when it comes off the side of the paper. All right, now that I've got the cardstock all blended with the ink, now I'm going to use my Gina K Connect glue. I'm going to put it on the back of the pattern paper and place that down on the cardstock. I love using the Gina K because it works really well. You don't have to use a lot of it, and it doesn't buckle up the paper, or at least that's my experience with it. And it's also repositionable, so once I place it on the cardstock, I'll be able to move it around a little bit just to make sure that I've got it on square with all of the corners and even spacing around the side. And as you'll see, I realized that I pushed it a little bit too far over on that one side, so I'm just adjusting it there and then just sort of pressing down just to smooth out those edges. Next, I have another piece of that gray cardstock, and I'm going to go ahead and blend some more of that Distressed Oxide Weathered Wood along the edges of this little strip of cardstock. And just basically doing the same technique I did with the backing of that cardstock, and just sort of, you know, dabbing on some ink there. I wanted to give it a little bit of a weathered look, kind of a rugged, masculine look. That's what I was going for when I did this.
And here I am just sort of cleaning up my workspace. If I was doing multiples of these cards, I probably wouldn't do that in between each card. There I could use the leftover ink. And now what I want to do is just kind of figure out where I want that piece of cardstock to be laid onto the card. And prior to this, I actually cut out these words, Best Wishes, with my Big Shot and the My Favorite Things die. I cut out two versions of the word and basically glued them together to kind of give them a little bit of dimension. And what I'm doing here is just trying to figure out where exactly I want those words to end up and in what position I want them to be. So I'm just sort of moving it around, figuring out where I want them. Now once I've figured that out, I am reaching for the purple tape, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a piece of this purple tape and lightly put it down on the word and just sort of lift that up. That way I've got the words both in the same place, and that purple tape's going to hold them together. Alright, then the next thing is I'm going to use my Tombow Extreme tape runner glue here. And I'm just going to put some adhesive on there. And that actually used to be a Stampin' Up! Fast Fuse. They no longer sell it, but then I discovered that Amazon actually sells it as a Tombow Extreme Glue, and I love it for heavy items and things that I really don't want to move. So I'm just sort of positioning it there. Once I'm happy, I'm kind of pressing down, and I need to trim off those extra sides there on the edge there. So I'm just using some straight scissors. It's about like an 8-inch. I try to use those bigger scissors because they do cut longer in a straight line. So I'm just sort of trimming that off. And now I've got a little bit of that extra on the side that needs to be textured a little bit with some more Distress ink. So I'm just going to ink up my sponge again, and then I'm going to you know, just quickly do a little bit of light shading on the side there. All right, now it's time to adhere those words down to the paper. And what I need to do is I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to put some Gina K Connect glue on the back of all of those letters, and just putting little dots, you know, throughout the entire word, making sure I've got enough coverage there. All right, now once that's done, I'm going to lift the words up just with the tape, and I'm going to use my little reverse tweezers there, and then I'm going to use the tape to place it down. All right, I'm not going to press down on the tape that much, but I am going to press down the rest of it because I want to lift that tape up, and I want to be very careful as to not to bring any of the cardstock material paper up with it. If you're light with this tape, you can get away with not getting any of the cardstock up. So just giving it a good press again, making sure that it's well adhered to the paper. All right, so now I'm taking the Gina K black cardstock, and I've already cut an 8.5 sheet down and made the A2 size, have scored the middle and then just folded it over. Now I'm going to adhere that entire card front to that card, to the card base. Again, I'm using the Tombow Extreme tape runner. I like it because it holds very well once it's placed down, and you know, when you have a lot of layers to a card, you need something strong so it's not going to come back up later. You do have to be very careful when you place it because once it's down, it pretty much is stuck. All right, so the next thing I need to do is actually stamp out the sentiment at the bottom. I just have a little scrap piece of gray cardstock here, and I'm using my MISTI, and just putting those magnets are so strong. Putting magnets down to hold my my paper in place, and I've got this sentiment here that I'm using from My Favorite Things Bundle of Balloons, I believe is the name of the stamp set. And just going to close the lid there on the MISTI and then pick up that stamp, and then I'm going to ink it up with the Gina K black, the Algalum ink, and that's a really nice rich black color, and it does really well on cardstock, so that's the color I'm going to use for this. Once I've gotten it inked up, then all there's left to do is basically to close that lid on the MISTI. What I like about the MISTI is that if you haven't gotten a clear, crisp image, you can just open that door again, re-ink, and then place the door back onto the cardstock, and it will ink exactly where you left off, basically giving you a second chance at stamping. This has really been a game changer for me using the MISTI stamping tool. I just absolutely love it and use it every single day that I'm crafting. Okay, I'm going to put my MISTI to the side, and now I'm going to use another die cut from My Favorite Things. It is one of the slanted sentiments die cuts that My Favorite Things makes, and I'm just trying to figure out which one I'm going to use, and that looks like it's going to fit it. So again, I'm going to use some of that purple tape and just sort of lay it down there to make sure that it doesn't move when I run it through the Big Shot. This is the way that I store my stamps, or excuse me, my die cuts. I've got a piece of chipwood there and a piece of magnetic sheet on top of it. And I find that it's really convenient to have it like this so I don't lose the pieces, and then I put them in a little envelope here. I'll link down below the items that I use to store my stamps in my, or not my stamps, my die cuts, my dies. Okay, so right now I've decided that I don't want that slanted edge, so what I'm going to basically do is just use my little paper trimmer or paper snips here and cut off the edges on both of them just to kind of trim down that cardstock so they're basically straight edges on both sides. Next, I'm going to use some foam squares from Gina K. I'm just going to peel these back, and I'm going to cut them in half because they are a little bit wide for what I need them for. So I'm just going to cut it in half, place the sticky side down on the back of the card strip. It'll take two square dots or squares, and again cut that down and place both of those halves right there on the little sentiment. Now that that's all done, I get to struggle with pulling the paper back. It always seems to be a struggle for me, but some days are better than others. All right, now that that's done, I'm just going to place that underneath where it says Best Wishes. Now, one thing I will say that this particular die, the little dot for the eye on Wishes always gets lost. So I just use some of the Nuvo gloss drops and just put a little dot there for the eye. And that's basically it.
I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. It's always nice to create masculine cards to have on those special occasions, and I hope this has inspired you to create your own. If you liked this tutorial, please do me a favor and give me a big thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so then you're notified every time I upload a new video. And please do me a favor, if you have any ideas or suggestions on which videos you'd like me to do a tutorial on next, please do comment down below. Alright, don't forget to search for Card Makers Card Swaps on Facebook and join our group and participate in our next month's swap. Take care, life happens, I comment, stamp me some love.